Hello, my dear friend. My name is Dana, and tonight I'll be the voice that gently guides you into rest. You don't need to do anything right now. There's nothing to fix, nothing to figure out, and nowhere else you need to be. Right now is only for you. A quiet pause in your day, a time to breathe, to soften, and to let go. As you listen to the sound of rain, imagine it tapping gently on your window. Each drop, a gentle reminder that the world outside can wait, that it's safe for you to slow down, to curl into stillness. Let your shoulders soften, let your jaw unclench, let your hands rest. Feel the weight of the day begin to melt away. With each breath, you're floating a little more lightly, sinking a little more deeply into the warmth beneath you. This is your time, a time to be held in stillness and story. Tonight, we'll take a gentle walk into a cozy little world, a world filled with the scent of cinnamon, the sound of steaming kettles, and the soft hum of quiet community. We'll visit a tiny neighborhood bakery, the kind of place that feels like a hug in the form of a room, where every shelf holds a memory and every corner glows with comfort, where the rain outside only makes the inside feel warmer. You'll meet Mia, the owner of Rainy Roots Bakery. She wakes before the sun, bakes from the heart, and shares her days with neighbors and friends who feel more like family. Tonight's story isn't about excitement. It's about ease. It's about returning to something simple, something slow, something soft. So wherever you are, whether you're lying in bed with the covers tucked up high, or simply sitting with your eyes closed and your heart open, let this be your exhale. There's nothing more to do now. Just follow the sound of my voice and let yourself be carried into the story. Welcome to Rainy Roots Bakery. The soft sound of rain continues to tap gently on the window. Outside, a thin mist floats just above the rooftops, and the trees sway gently with the breeze. Inside, everything is still. In a cozy upstairs bedroom, Mia lies nestled under a thick patchwork quilt. She stirs slowly, her breathing soft, her mind halfway between sleep and waking. It's still dark out, but not completely. A dim silver light peeks through the clouds, casting a dreamy glow across the room. Mia opens her eyes just slightly, then closes them again. She takes a long breath in and lets it out with a sigh. This is her favorite kind of morning, the kind that makes you feel wrapped in softness before the day even begins. She stretches slowly beneath the quilt, her arms extending above her head, her toes curling with emotion. Then she brings her hands to her chest and smiles to herself. Another day begins. She sits up gradually, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. Her toes find her thick, knitted slippers fuzzy and warm. She slips them on with practiced ease, then stands, feeling the wooden floor cool beneath her soles. Outside, the wind carries a soft whistle. The rain changes tempo, sometimes soft, like a whisper, other times a bit stronger like fingers drumming gently on the roof. Mia tiptoes into the kitchen, wrapping a shawl over her shoulders. She lights a small lamp on the counter, and the warm glow fills the room. She fills the kettle and sets it on the stove. As it begins to heat, she pulls out a tin of loose-leaf tea and a little ceramic cup. She loves this morning ritual. It grounds her, the scent of dried leaves, the anticipation of warmth. Steam rises from the kettle as it begins to sing. Mia pours the hot water into her cup and watches the tea leaves dance. The color begins to shift clear water, becoming amber. She lifts the cup, holding it with both hands, and takes in the scent. She sips slowly. The heat moves through her body, chasing away the last traces of sleep. Outside the window, the town is still asleep. Street lamps glow softly in the rain. Porches remain dark. Even the neighborhood cats are curled up, dreaming on windowsills. She finishes her tea and gently places the cup in the sink. Then, moving slowly and with intention, Mia heads to her small bedroom closet. She pulls on her favorite soft gray sweater, buttons up her wool coat, wraps a deep burgundy scarf around her neckline that her neighbor crocheted last winter. Each piece of clothing feels like armor against the chilly, damp morning, but not just protection. They're pieces of memory, of connection, woven with kindness. From a small wooden hook near the door, she lifts her umbrella. It's an old one, forest green with a wooden handle, a little chipped at the edges, but still strong, still hers. She steps toward the door and pauses, hand on the knob. There's something sacred about this moment, the exact instant between the comfort of home and the first step into the world. She breathes in, then opens the door. The air greets her, cool, moist, full of the scent of rain and leaves. Mia opens her umbrella and steps onto the path, the fabric blooming like a flower above her head. Rain patters against the canopy, each drop a tiny percussion. The street is mostly empty. Puddles shimmer with reflections of soft yellow light. from the lamps. The town is quiet, held gently in the arms of the morning. Mia begins to walk. The wind blows softly, sending ripples through the puddles and shaking leaves loose from the trees. One lands on Mia's shoulder, a small maple leaf, golden and speckled. She smiles and leaves it where it rests. She walks slowly, carefully avoiding puddles, though now and then she allows herself to step through one just for the familiar splash. On the way, she passes old stone houses with ivy climbing their sides, windows fogged from warmth inside, chimneys beginning to smoke. A cat watches her from one sill, tail curled neatly around its paws. As she walks further downhill, the roof of the bakery comes into view. Its bright yellow door, a beacon through the mist. Fairy lights strung along the awning twinkle, faintly even in the rain. The sight makes her heart swell, a feeling that never gets old. This place is hers, a space she's built slowly, carefully, with flour, sugar, and love. She reaches the front step. The door is speckled with raindrops. Mia lowers her umbrella and gently shakes the water off. Then, reaching into her coat pocket, she finds the brass key. It clicks in the lock with a familiar sound. She pushes the door open. The air inside is still and waiting. She steps in. She wipes her feet carefully, leaving her umbrella by the mat. Then she flicks on the lights. One by one, warm glows fill the bakery. The counter, the display case, the small corner bookshelf, even the hand-painted chair in the corner meant just for the little ones. The scent of yesterday's baking still lingers, faint notes of cinnamon, pecan, and vanilla. She breathes in deeply and smiles. She's home. The brass key turns with a soft click, and the old wooden door creaks open. Mia steps inside, closing the door gently behind her. The rain hushes to a muffled patter on the awning outside, and in the stillness, the quiet breath of the bakery greets her like an old friend. She stands still for a moment, letting the silence wrap around her like a woolen shawl. Everything is just as she left it. Soft shadows stretch across the floorboards. The outline of the counter rests in the dim amber light from the porch outside. She leans down and picks up her folded string of fairy lights. With a gentle motion, she plugs it in near the baseboard. One by one, the tiny bulbs glow to life. Golden light spills across the bakery, bathing the small space in warmth. There's a special kind of comfort here, like opening a storybook you've read 100 times and still finding something new Mia hangs her coat on the wooden hook by the entrance, carefully drapes her scarf, and sets her damp umbrella upside down in its usual corner. She pads across the wooden floor in her socks. No one else is here yet, and that's exactly how she likes it. These early moments, before the ovens hum, before the espresso machine sputters to life, they're her time to breathe, to settle, to fall back in love with this place every single morning. She walks slowly around the bakery, letting her fingertips trace the edge of the display case, still empty, still cold from the night. She peers at the chalkboard sign on the wall, yesterday's specials faintly visible. She'll erase it soon and write something new. But for now, she lets her eyes wander over the curves of the letters, written in her own soft handwriting. Near the window sits a stack of small books, paperbacks with creased spines, cookbooks with splattered pages, and a few well-loved novels left behind by customers who never ask for them back. There's also a little shelf of children's books. One of them has a drawing inside, a crayon doodle of a cupcake and a smiling sun. She smiles, remembering the little boy who drew it last spring. Her gaze turns to the left corner of the room, a miniature rocking chair painted by hand in cheerful swirls, a piece of her childhood she brought here so that others could feel safe the way she once did. The floorboards beneath creak softly as she walks. Each sound is familiar. Each scent feels like memory. Flour, vanilla, a hint of cinnamon left over from yesterday's cinnamon rolls, and deeper still, the earthy scent of time. She moves to the back of the bakery, past the countertop, and into the open kitchen. Sunlight hasn't quite reached this space yet, but the soft glimmer from the fairy lights still dances along the tiles. She brushes her hand over the workbench, worn smooth from years of kneading and rolling. Each groove in the wood is a part of the story. On the far shelf, a jar of dried lavender leans against a tin of cocoa. Bags of flour, jars of sugar, a wooden box of spices lined up in their usual places. This is her orchestra, and she, the quiet conductor who will soon bring them to life. She opens the pantry door slowly. Inside, it smells like vanilla and warm wood and dried fruit. Tubs of ingredients are stacked neatly. Labels written in her flowing cursive: clove, nutmeg, brown sugar. On the very top shelf sits her grandmother's cookbook, bound in worn leather and tied with a ribbon. She doesn't open it now, but just seeing it there gives her a sense of peace, like the spirit of the bakery is watching over her. As she walks back into the main room, Mia stops by the front counter and turns on the tiny wall heater. A soft hum begins, and warm air slowly circulates. She watches the condensation on the window, raindrops streaking down like watercolor on glass. Outside, The town is still quiet, but inside, life is beginning again. The lights, the warmth, the hush of rain on the roof. It's time to begin. Mia stepped into the warm hush of the kitchen and smiled to herself. There was a kind of stillness here before the day began, a stillness that hummed gently beneath the surface like a melody yet to play. She crossed over to the wall and pressed a small silver switch. With a low, comforting warmth, the oven came to life. A soft orange light flickered behind the glass door, and Mia could already feel the slow warmth blooming into the room. From a wooden shelf above the counter, she pulled down a canvas-lined basket of fresh flour. Next came a jar of sugared's glass surface, slightly fogged from the cool morning air, and a little bowl of golden raisins. They stuck together like sleepy friends curled under a blanket. On the spice shelf, she paused. Cinnamon, nutmeg, just a pinch of cardamom. She reached for each one with care, fingertips brushing worn labels with frayed corners. These were more than just spices. They were memories, passed down like lullabies. Mia took a small tin of baking powder, gave it a tiny shake just to hear the soft rattle inside, and smiled as she returned to the counter. She laid everything out in a gentle line, each ingredient waiting patiently like dancers about to take the stage. With a clean dish towel over her shoulder and her apron tied snugly at the waist, she was ready. Mia picked up her favorite mixing bowl, a wide ceramic one with a pale blue glaze and tiny cracks along the rim. She liked those cracks. They made the bowl feel alive. She poured in the flour with a soft whisper, then added sugar, a pinch of salt, and the warming spices. She took her wooden spoon worn smooth from years of stirring and slowly turned the mixture round and round, watching the colors swirl like soft clouds of morning fog. Next came the butter, cold, cubed, and waiting in a stoneware dish. Mia dropped the cubes into the flour and rubbed them in with her fingertips. The dough began to form crumbly, gentle, like beach sand before the waves come in. Then the cream. She poured it slowly, letting it stream like white silk from a small pitcher, and mixed again, this time with slower strokes. She folded in the raisins last, feeling them roll against the dough like little marbles. Mia reached for her round cutterets, metal edges slightly dull. She pressed it into the dough, lifting out soft circles and placing them gently onto the baking tray. 12 scones, neat and proud, ready for the heat of the oven. She brushed the tops with cream and sprinkled a touch of sugar over each, just enough to catch the light. With both hands, she lifted the tray, opened the oven door, and placed the scones inside. The bell above the door rang softly, a high silver chime that danced through the bakery like birdsong. Mia looked up from the sink, drying her hands on her apron. There he was, Mr. Elliot, a man in his 70s with kind eyes and a scarf that never matched his coat. "Good morning," she called warmly, already reaching for his usual mug. "Rainy one today?" he replied, shaking out his umbrella by the door. "The best kind," she said, "for scones and stories." She poured him a cup of strong black coffee, just the way he liked it, no sugar, a splash of cream. He took it with a nod and settled by the window, watching droplets chase each other down the glass. "Smells like cinnamon," he said. "Scones," she grinned. "Just came out of the oven." Mia plated one gently, placed it on a small dish with a curl of butter beside it, and brought it over. As she set it down, the scent seemed to wrap the table in a soft quilt. They sat in silence for a moment, just the sound of the rain, the clink of a spoon against ceramic, and the occasional whisper of breath. A few minutes later, the doorbell chimed again. This time it was Clara and her daughter Lily, bundled in bright coats, cheeks rosy from the wind. "Did we miss the scones?" Clara asked with wide eyes. Mia laughed. "Just in time." She handed them each a warm treat, and Lily giggled as the butter melted on her fingers. Mia looked around the bakery. The soft lights, the foggy windows, the warm faces and full cups. It was quiet, but not empty. These were the moments she cherished. Not grand, not loud, but full of the kind of peace that stayed with you long after the rain had passed. The morning drifted onward in a soft, gentle rhythm, like the slow turning of a music box. Outside, the rain eased to a drizzle, leaving the windows streaked with trails of silver. Mia stood by the counter, wiping a small splash of cream from the wood grain. She paused, her hands still, her gaze lingering on the fading rings left by warm mugs. There was a kind of beauty in these quiet remnants, the invisible signatures of people who had been here and felt at home. She moved to the bookshelf near the back of the bakery, a tall, worn piece of oak with a crooked shelf near the middle. Nestled among cookbooks and handwritten journals was a photo frame. Inside, a black and white image of a much younger Mia, standing beside an older woman in an apron. Her grandmother. Mia smiled softly, brushing a bit of dust from the glass. She remembered the way her grandmother would hum, not full songs, just melodies made up as she worked, and how she always let Mia lick the spoon after mixing batter, no matter how messy her fingers already were. She reached behind the photo and pulled out a notebook, its spine creased and corners folded, a ribbon bookmark still tucked at a page she hadn't seen in years. There, in soft blue ink, was a letter, not addressed to anyone, not signed, but clearly written in her grandmother's hand. Some mornings will feel heavier than others. You'll wonder if the effort is worth it, but remember the warmth you create stays in the walls, in the chairs, in the cups people hold. Love is baked into the silence. Mia's throat tightened slightly. She closed the notebook gently, as though tucking a secret back to sleep. She turned toward the front of the shop. The rain had stopped. A thin beam of sunlight filtered through a gap in the clouds. It touched the corner of a table where Elliot had once sat. The table was now empty. Mia walked over and ran her hand along its surface. There were faint scratches in the wood, marks made from coins, keys, or the edge of a book, all speaking of quiet, forgotten moments. She sat down just for a minute. No rush, no tasks, just to be still. From the kitchen came the faint tick of the cooling oven. From the shelves, the scent of cinnamon still hung gently in the air, and from somewhere deeper within Mia herself, a peace settled. She looked around and thought, it's not about the perfect pastries. It's about presence. It's about creating a place where people feel they can breathe again. Just then, the bell above the door jingled once more. Not loudly, just a soft chime, like a whisper of wind brushing past. A young man stepped inside, shoulders hunched from the cold, hands shoved into his coat pockets. His eyes looked around, unsure. Mia stood, walked to the counter, and offered a smile. Not too big, just enough to say, "You're safe here." He exhaled quietly, and just like that, the bakery wrapped another soul in its warmth. The bell above the bakery door chimed softly again, and just like that, the rhythm of the day shifted. Mia stepped behind the counter as the room began to gently fill. One by one, familiar faces entered the cozy space. Mrs. Alden, with her knitted gloves and her tiny brown dachshund in a raincoat. Young Clara and her dad, still giggling from something funny they must have shared on the walkover. And Mr. Bennet, tall and quiet, with a book already tucked under one arm. There was no rush, only warmth. Mia greeted each of them by name, her voice a gentle breeze across the quiet hum of the morning. She poured tea into cream-colored cups and topped scones with golden jam. The room smelled of honey, butter, and cinnamon, a comforting embrace. And even though she had done this 100 times before, today something felt fuller, as if each gesture, each smile, each sip, each thank you was weaving an invisible thread between them all. Mia glanced at the clock. It was nearly noon. Sunlight now filtered softly through the rain-speckled windows, casting long amber shapes onto the tiled floor. At the corner table, Clara had picked up a napkin and was doodling cats with blueberry eyes. Across from her, her father looked up, smiled at Mia, and mouthed, "This is her favorite place." She smiled back, heart gently stirred. By the fireplace nook, Mrs. Alden had taken out her knitting needles. The quiet click of wood against wood added a calming rhythm to the room. She paused only to sip from her tea, then looked up and said softly to no one in particular, "I used to knit here with my sister every Wednesday for years. She's not with us anymore, but I still come. It still feels like she's around, somehow." No one answered, but no one needed to. Everyone felt it. Mia moved slowly from table to table, refilling mugs, sharing warm glances, offering an extra cookie to Clara, just this once. And with every little moment, every shared silence or soft laughter, Mia was reminded of why she kept this bakery alive, not just for the pastries, but for this magic between people that only reveals itself in quiet, honest spaces. The door creaked open again. This time, it was the young man from earlier, his hair still a little damp, cheeks flushed. He held something in his hand, a small umbrella, yellow. "I fixed the hinge," he said shyly. "I used to do metal work with my grandfather." Mia took it, eyes wide with surprise. "It works again?" she asked. He nodded. "It's not perfect, but it opens now." Mia smiled, touched more than she expected. "That's more than enough." She placed the umbrella beside the counter and reached for a plate. "Have you tried my blackberry scones?" He shook his head. "Well," she said, placing one carefully on a plate, "then this is where you start." He took a seat by the window, and Mia returned to her rhythm. A rhythm that wasn't just baking or serving, but holding space for the stories unfolding around her. Stories written in butter and jam, in eye contact and silent thanks, in seats that became sacred because of the people who filled them. The bakery quiets again as the last customer waves goodbye, the soft jingle of the door fading into the hush of the rain. Mia exhales slowly, her hands wrapped around a still warm mug of tea. She stands for a moment, simply breathing, watching the steam curl upward like tiny dancers in the afternoon light. She walks slowly through the shop, turning off lights one by one, unplugging the fairy strands until only a soft amber lamp glows near the window. The oven cools, the air is calm, and everything feels complete. She picks it up with a fond smile, holding it gently like something that now carries stories, not just function. Outside, the rain has slowed to a fine mist. Mia makes her way home, the umbrella holding firm this time, her boots splashing softly on the damp street. A few windows glow warmly in the neighborhood homes, curtains drawn tight, cozy lives unfolding behind glass. Mia snuggles beneath the covers, eyes fluttering as she gazes up at the ceiling one last time. Tomorrow, the flower will rise again, and stories will gather in the corners of her little shop like steam from a fresh teacup. But for now, she lets go, and the day gently closes around her like the final page of a well-loved book.